Welcome to the Calm Cockpit. In today's episode, we're going to try something new. In a world of fast fixes, crazy social media advertising, and general internet shysters, it can be hard to know what is real and what isn't. When it comes to hacks and gadgets to help improve your retention, mental clarity, relaxation, and reduce anxiety, there's so many options out there, and much of it comes at a high price with little to no actual scientific accuracy or results. So today I thought I would test our local expert, Gita, to see firstly if she's ever heard of these things before, and second, does she think they could actually work?
As a yoga and meditation instructor, a misconception about what I do is that you must be into that woo-woo vibe. But what people do not realize, and we've talked about a lot in previous shows, is that many of the techniques I practice have been vetted for years by health and science experts, and they truly do affect the body and mind in positive ways. But it's because of this stereotype that I tend to look really super critically at these types of hacks and quick fixes in the wellness industry. So while I have been purposefully left in the dark about what you're going to ask about, and I hate to say it, I think I'm going to come up with more no than yes on these techniques, but I'm truly curious for you to ask me all of your questions.
I'm actually really excited about this one. The Calm Cockpit starts now.
Welcome everyone to today's episode. I'm Gita Brown, a midlife student pilot and licensed yoga and meditation educator with over 30 years of experience teaching high performers how to improve their lives without adding stress.
And I'm John Niehaus, corporate pilot and professional flight instructor. And as we mentioned in the show opener, today we're going to talk about quick fixes and hacks. One of my favorite things, mostly because I'm always looking for that edge, that shortcut, if you will. And unfortunately, I think today I'm going to find out that, there's probably not as many shortcuts as I wish there were. So, Gita, your job today is to tell me no.
Well, since we've met, you bring up a lot of these things and I go, boo, no. Because one of the favorite things my teachers always say is that there are no shortcuts. However, there is some truth to some of these things. So I'm looking forward to you hitting me with all the things that you've heard about and asking fact or fiction. I'll do my best. I do want to add that little disclaimer, though. Sometimes this goes a little out of my area of expertise. I'm not a doctor. Before you try any of this stuff, filter it through the lens of your own intelligence. And if you have health concerns, see your doctor, your physical therapist, your psychiatrist, because some of this stuff really can impact your health in a pretty profound way. And if you're on other medications, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of light for entertainment purposes.
Right. I think that's good advice. And just as a quick kind of preamble for this episode, the podcast is not intended to take you kind of off the deep end on things that don't work or convince you that there's sort of a magic fix for personal and mental health, as much as I wish there was. The idea behind this episode is more just kind of fun. It's intended to dispel some myths out there and figure out, there's just a lot of crazy stuff. And what do we know? What do we not know? And who wants to try something just to see if it works? So that's where we are on this.
Yeah. And when we started the podcast, we were very serious that we wanted to make a true impact in the mental health and mental performance training of aviation. But as we were looking at our catalog, we're like, oh, we need to have a fun episode in there because we have a lot of serious discussion. And sometimes I think that phrase that I'm at my most serious when I'm laughing is actually true. So of course, you listeners out there, I'm sure that every one of you has your little wellness hack that you do. So if you have something you do or a technique you want us to try, or you want us to do a little deeper dive in some of the things you're using, we would love to hear from you. So you can just drop us an email, calmcockpit@gmail.com. We reply to all of the emails we get because, hey, we don't get that many. We're just a baby podcast. But we truly would love to hear from you because it allows us to sort of put our pulse on what you guys are using, what you're interested in. So we'd love to hear from you of any of your wellness hacks and techniques. And so, John, this was your idea. I have been left in the dark about what you're going to ask. I scanned the list just a little bit, but I tried not to cloud my mind with anything. I'm just going to answer off the cuff today from whatever you ask me. So I am like, kind of feel like I'm on the hot seat a little bit, but in a good way, because I love this stuff and I talk about it all day long.
Right. And one quick thing as far as suggestions. Yes, we want to do it. And yes, we want to try it on ourselves if we've not heard it before. But if my AME says I can't do it, I'm not doing it. So don't suggest it. just so you know. Where this all comes from, and again, we've told these stories before, and everybody knows that I like a good hack. In some of the situations I've been in previously, I have been in that spot where it's like, you just need something to bring the temperature down a little bit. And so when you're in a position where you're just overstressed and tired and exhausted, and you're just trying to find something, you're willing to kind of believe just about anything. Not that I'm that gullible, but I think there's a difference between being gullible and just searching for a solution. And so if anybody's ever been in that place before, I'm sure that, anything from a lucky shirt to talking to yourself in the mirror to, any kind of lucky charm or whatever it might be out there, you're just willing to try it, even if you don't actually think it's going to work. And so I've been to that spot. And the thing about it is that once you start searching for those things, the algorithm learns a lot about you, whether it's true or not. And between some of those experiences that I've had, plus just general research for this podcast, my algorithm is all kinds of messed up. And so I get some crazy stuff in my online advertising world, and some of it is just wild. You wouldn't even believe it. And I'm curious to know how many people actually do see this and go, maybe I'm going to get this. Maybe I'm going to buy these bed sheets that connect to the home power plug and are supposed to reduce anxiety and increase your ability to sleep. We'll talk about that finally after teasing it for 11 episodes or however long it's been. We're going to talk about that. So I've got a long list of things that I think that might pique some people's interests.
Bring it on.
All right, so let's start out with the easy stuff. Many people tune out when they hear the word holistic, right? One of the things I want to do when we first start here is just kind of learn a little bit about what that is. And I think that the world is starting to open up a little bit. I'm not saying that everything under the holistic banner is necessarily scientifically proven, but I think that, things like being a chiropractor used to be considered holistic. And now I think it helps out a lot of people in the world. So can you define what is holistic and what's the difference between something that works under that umbrella and something that doesn't?
I'm going to just step back for one moment here, because for the last year, I have been trying to discern where that idea of like woo-woo comes from and why words like holistic kind of get pushed aside. Like, why would I pay attention to that? So I've started to pay attention to, in TV shows and movies, how people who practice things like I do, yoga, meditation, or my Taoist brothers and sisters, Tai Chi, how we're portrayed in the media. And here's what I have found. And then I will definitely define holistic, what it means to me. But here's what most people think of and how it's portrayed in the media. It is someone who is usually wearing long, flowy clothes, right? So very unstructured. They're usually completely disorganized. I think the formal word would be a shit show, right? They have like lack organization. They have poor interpersonal boundaries, which mean they come up to people. They're like, oh, namaste, let me hug you. Like they're just way oversharing with their emotions all the time.
Lack of showering,
Lack of
usually.
showering, right? There's usually like unsightly body hair. Oh my God. There's just so much that I cringe. And there's also a huge lack of personal boundaries when it comes to personal space. You see, like the classic yoga teacher in all the movies is usually a man who's touching people inappropriately when he's adjusting them.
Usually without a shirt on, maybe some booty shorts.
Oh, totally, totally. And while there have been cases in the real world scenario of men abusing their power and women abusing their power in that way all of this is portrayed in the media and even ads is so wackadoo from what has been my experience in a very like formal, traditional, very conservative yoga upbringing that it gives yoga woo woo, holistic, all that like just such a bad name. So sometimes why I'm saying all of this is for my dear listeners to think about the sources of where you're getting your knee jerk reaction from. If you're getting a knee jerk reaction to any of these things we talk about today, look at that and think maybe the sources where you've been getting your information about holistic types of things hasn't actually been a great source. It's either been a media portrayal in a movie or a TV show of just some outlandish creature, or it's been a lot of the snake oil salesman like John is talking about, right? Like your feed is full of people who are using people's suffering as a way to make money. And that to me is completely has nothing to do with holistic living and the way I live my life. So, okay, I'm off my soapbox. Dun, 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 dun. So holistic, what it means to me is actually considering my development and the development of my students in, guess what, a holistic way. So in the Western world, we tend to look very much at intellectual development and we look at physical development. Do you have muscles? Do you have fitness? Do you have intellectual hierarchy, right? Have you gone to college? Do you have a job? So we kind of divide it off into those two different things. When I look at my music students or my yoga students, I'm looking at the totality of their life. I'm looking at their physical well-being, their mental well-being, their community relationships. It's more like a web. So physical health, mental health, community. I'm looking, do they have an avocation that meets their strengths? I'm looking at their financial health as part of that web. I'm looking at their physical stability of their living space. Do they have a stable living environment? I'm looking at their web of relationships on a very deep interpersonal relationship. Do they have a significant other or family that they're close to? And then do they have people all the way out in all the layers to those very sort of soft contacts that we have during the day where they might see at church or at the coffee shop? I'm looking at all of those layers, physical, mental, where they live, all that biopsychosocial model that I learned as a music therapist. To me, that is actually what is holistic. So it's not just prioritizing either intellectual development or financial or just like physical, like am I fit and buff, but it's looking at the totality of the person. Does their lifestyle fit who they are? And is all of that in harmony? And then if one thing is out of balance in that sort of holistic web, like their finances are a mess, that's where the energy goes to sort of balance out the rest of the things. Make sense?
So it's not just, going out in a full moon and,
Exactly.
howling and running around naked through the forest.
It is the total opposite of that. And I think that's why you're going to hear me get heated in this episode today, because it's actually like my teachers are always going, because my teachers get heated about it too. They're like, it's so scientific what we do. How do people not see that? I'm like, well, because a lot of people don't ever take classes like that. They take classes that are sort of take one little wisp of something they learned from that, and then they sell it in a jar to somebody, and they call that holistic. So holistic really means taking full responsibility for all the aspects of your being and your life and making sure they're in alignment with your highest goals.
Well, and it's funny. I did a family vacation to Sedona, Arizona, about a month ago. And boy, that place has a lot of this stuff. And I got some of the ideas for the list that we're going to talk about from Sedona because, that is like central for there's portals and there's magic rocks and there's all of these things. And if there's one community of people I know believe in this stuff, it's conservative pilots. I definitely know that you guys out there are probably buying your special rocks and creating pyramids to sit underneath. I just
You would be surprised.
not that I'm judging if that's something that you're into. I mean, who am I to say it doesn't work? But anyways, so let's start the list if you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, so
I'm in.
I'm doing a softball one here for you because
Okay.
I think that a lot of people would list this under some of the things, and obviously we know just based on what you have already said, both in this episode and in all of the previous ones, meditation and mindfulness. Does it work? I didn't think you'd have to think about this one.
Well, yes and yes. However, they're two completely different things. So, meditation is a formal practice where you are learning how to master your own mind. And mindfulness, generally speaking, is a practice that has its roots in Buddhism, in traditional Buddhism. And here in the West, there's been a whole school of individuals who have taken pieces of the what I would call the rich tapestry of Buddhist practice, which is all the holistic things I was talking about, how you comport yourself in every moment of every day, 24/7 Buddhism. They've taken elements of that out and called it mindfulness, and they have things now like mindfulness based stress reduction, where they've done sort of like a Western scientific analysis of these practices to see if they work. And there's a whole school on that mindfulness based stress reduction. You can get certified in it, and it's fantastic. There's a lot of scientific validity to that practice. The reason why I kind of hesitate, I guess, is because on the one hand, I see the benefit of mindfulness, which is essentially being present and aware of what's happening in the moment, as being a very challenging thing for most Westerners to do. We're constantly distracted by everything else, the past, the future, and we're scattered. And I see the benefit of distilling down the rich tapestry of Buddhist tradition to those specific practices and teaching it to people, and then proving that that does reduce stress and anxiety and helps their life. But as I've been trained, and I've never really talked about my lineage here, but I'm trained in a yoga lineage that we can trace our roots back. I think it's about 6,000 years. And my teachers always say, we don't want to just give people a crumb. We want to give them the whole loaf. So if I teach someone a single breathing practice, like we did with Sarah Gilbert in not our last episode, but episode number something, that breathing practice alone is great, and it will work to reduce stress and anxiety. We have so much scientific evidence. We know that's true. However, I know that if I plug that meditation or that mindfulness technique back into the fullness of the wisdom tradition where it comes, the power is amplified exponentially, because it translates into everything you're doing in your life. So meditation and mindfulness can work. It's kind of like I guess what I'm trying to say, it's kind of like a sliding scale. You can do meditation for 15 minutes every day just to reduce your anxiety, and that's fantastic. If you take that same meditation and you plug it into the richness of all the 8 limbs of the yoga we practice, which involves ethical precepts and diet and how you interact with other people. And it's so rich, and you incorporate the movement practices, the hatha yoga. Oh my gosh, you do all of that work. Then the power of that meditation, again, gets amplified to such a huge degree that, to my mind, it's so much more powerful than we pluck out a single technique. So yes and no. And the reason really why I hesitated, John, is because the practices themselves are powerful, of meditation and mindfulness. But if you have a crappy intention of why you're doing it, then it can make you into not such a nice person. So this gets a little out there, but in the yoga traditions, there are quite honestly manuals of like the first yoga books that we ever used, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. In those books, they say before you practice meditation, before you even practice the physical stuff, you have to get your mind and your ethics right. That's actually the whole first portion of the book is all about like the ethical reasons behind why you want this power in your life. Once you get that sorted, then you're like cleared, and then the teachers will let you meditate because they don't want you to have a clear and a sharp mind if it's full of a bunch of garbage and it's directed at negatively abusing your power to make yourself feel better or to hold other people down. So it is powerful, but if you're using it for greedy, selfish reasons, it's, it's not, it's a wonderful tool to have, but you have to look at kind of like your motivation behind it. Does that make sense? Is that too woo woo?
I mean, everything you just said, I think, can be summarized by good old Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility.
Totally. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Totally. Thank you. Yes. See, this is why we're such a good pair, because I will talk for 20 minutes and then John goes, what she means is blah, 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 blah. Yes. That is exactly it. And my also big thing is that so much of what we see now is this snake oil and the shysters is people taking indigenous wisdom traditions and removing one little part and then selling it in a very capitalistic way and removing it from its roots. And we know what happens to a plant when you chop off the roots. It dies and then it's not effective. And then people say, oh, it didn't work. And I'm like, well, that's because you don't have the foundation that you need in order to really utilize the power.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And again, as far as this list is concerned, one of the big things is focusing it on, again, that idea of these are things that are being sold to sort of reduce your stress or improve your performance, things that pilots would specifically be like, hey, I'm going to training, this is how I'm going to prepare, or something I'm going to do to give myself an edge. And so that's why I think it's important that we try to figure out like what works, because if you're trying to use something to give yourself an edge, it might as well, be something real, not just something that you hope works. Unless it's your lucky green shirt, and then I'm not stopping.
Hey, if you pair that lucky green shirt with meditating for 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the evening, you're golden. Pilots, if you want one thing I could tell you out of today's meditation works, and there are so many different ways to meditate, you can find a way that will work for you, including moving meditation. You don't have to sit in order to still the mind. It is phenomenal.
Well, I have passed every check ride and every recurrent check in the last 8 years with the same green shirt, and that I promise you works. So,
do you wash it in between, or is this a situation of, well, because some people are like that. They're like, no, don't touch it. Don't touch it.
No. It gets washed, but that's the only time I wear it. And my wife is like, you never wear this shirt. I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm like, no. If you want me to continue to make money in this household, this shirt cannot go anywhere.
I figured it would be in like a special box somewhere, with like a ribbon around it.
Vacuum seal it. Yeah.
That's with some crystals on top of it,
So here's another weird one.
Okay.
This one came up in my social media feed, and it kind of goes back to that whole, like, if you've ever seen, any of those shows or like Aladdin, where there's the one guy who's laying on the bed of nails. They now are selling this like thin roller pad thing that it's a mat and it unrolls. And it's got these little like plastic spikes on them. And they want to sell this mat for like $200 or something crazy. And I'm sure it costs them like 30 cents in China to make.
Right.
And their whole thing on their website is that, like, if you lay on this spiky mat for 5 minutes or something, that it improves blood flow and it helps circulate, additional blood to your brain, or I don't know. Does any of that stuff work? Can I really lay on a bed of nails and feel some sort of mental improvement?
Well, that's a new one. I mean, certainly, in the yogic tradition, they would have sort of feats of strength like that. I mean, we've seen the pictures of the yogis laying on the beds of nails. They have their little loincloth and they're laying on it. what that was done, and I'm going way back, is partly to demonstrate the mind-body connection that one has to equally distribute your weight without digging into any particular area, but also just that in the yoga tradition that there is a sense that there is something sort of beyond the body and the mind that we're connected to. So we're connected to the whole universe. So that was sort of like a demonstration of like, I can endure a certain amount of physical pain and not react to it, with like a fear response. So that was sort of like the yogi feats of strength, the power of the mind and the body, the mind over the body. To your point of them saying it's going to improve blood flow and all that, a sucker is born every minute. I mean, really? You want to improve some blood flow? Take a walk. Do some hatha yoga, lift some weights. So no, that stuff is bunk. Pass. Hard pass.
Okay. Spiky beds don't work. All right. Got it. All right. So back to Sedona.
Okay.
So my 5-year-old son walks into a shop, and he could be a geologist at this point. He loves rocks.
Oh, cool.
And walks in, and there's just a wall of all these shiny rocks.
Oh,
and
Crystal Central, right? Yeah.
Not even crystals, just rocks.
Okay.
Just rocks. And this one's supposed to be for positive attitude, and this one's supposed to be for intelligence and de-stressing and, recovery after surgery and all this other stuff.
Right.
Can I really carry around a rock in my pocket and have all of these good things? Or you see them, and I guess I even have one just more for aesthetics than anything, but, you see the little circle bracelets that people have now, and they're supposed to bring certain qualities.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Okay. So short answer, no. But longer answer, it's complicated. So let's see. Is buying a hunk of amethyst, which is said to help power your intuition, actually going to just like magically make you a more intuitive person? Reference back to what Gita said at the beginning. Think about your intention of why you're doing what you're doing, and then the practices that you're doing to cultivate that intention. So things like crystals, different rocks can be useful on twofold. Number one, if they're used to direct the power of your mind towards a specific outcome, and you repeat it with enough practice, right? It's just a tool to focus the mind on something. That's number one. Or number two, if it's helpful to connect us back to the natural world, because the way we live now is we have a fundamental disconnection with the natural world, and we've forgotten that we're part of it. So the number one point of if it's helping you focus your intention, let's say you're somebody who went through, an emotional trauma where like you lost someone that you love. Like we live in an industry, or work in an industry rather, where most of us at this point know someone who's lost their life in an accident or an incident. So let's say you're getting over, I don't know if you can really get over that, but you're dealing with some traumatic grief. You make it through a certain part of the process and you sort of feel stuck in that grief, and you're wanting to focus your efforts towards, I don't know, a concept like, let's say letting go of the need of control. Let's do an easier one. You're wanting to bring more joy into your life. You're like, I've become a sourpuss. I want more joy in my life. So you go out and you get yourself something like rose quartz, which is a beautiful, gorgeous pink stone. So you get this piece of rose quartz and you say, my intention for the next 6 months is I am actively cultivating joy in my life. I have this piece of rose quartz next to my bedside. So before I go to sleep, when I wake up in the morning, I'm seeing this stone and I'm thinking about that intention. The idea is that because you're seeing it represented in this piece of crystal, that you have decided what it means for you, that you're laying some neural pathways in the brain then for your day when you're out in the world, for your brain to say, oh, I'm remembering that I'm prioritizing joy. So I'm going to hang out after my flight today and I'm going to talk to John for a little while after the flight. You might be making more choices throughout the day to prioritize joy than if you didn't have that crystal sitting there kind of reminding you of what you want. Does that make sense? It's like an embodied intentional kind of thing.
It's a reminder at that point.
Yeah,
It's, to reference another movie, it's a field of dreams, build it and they will come.
a
If I
little
have
bit.
it, then I'll remember.
Yeah, yeah. And if also if it's something uplifting that you find beautiful, we know, and this we have ample evidence on, that when the human eye takes in objects that it considers beautiful, that there's an increase in those feel good hormones in the body. So it's kind of like cultivating, taking in that beauty physically through the eyes, then helps us feel psychologically uplifted, which then usually helps us make better choices about how we're spending our time. So that's the first point. If it's helping you kind of embody an intention and remind that, and you're practicing with it, that's the key. You have to practice with it. You can't just put it in the pocket.
What you're saying is if I fill my pockets with, lava rock, I'm not going to pass my check ride without
Nope.
studying.
Not going to happen. But if you have a rock, like let's say selenite is a good one. It's a very just like white, pure crystal. When you look at it, that sort of is amplifying like the aviator's mind. Clear, precise, not seeing things through judgment or bias. So you look at that before you study, take a few breaths and think, my mind is clear and bright. My mind is clear and bright. You look at that stone, then you study. It's just a technique to help focus the mind.
And so if I wander into the now defunct Bed Bath & Beyond.
Yes. Oh, I was so sad when that closed.
And buy myself a Himalayan salt lamp.
Oh.
Am I doing anything but poorly lighting my room?
I think they make great accent lamps. And, I moved here to New England. I had one of those. I don't know, had it for years. And it's so freaking humid here all the time. I live like a mile from the ocean. The thing like melted. It was like slowly like dissolved all over the desk. And then there was all this like crystallized pink Himalayan salt like wedged into the desk. But no, a Himalayan salt lamp, if it's beautiful and it uplifts your space and your vibe, sure. But is it charging negative ions? BS. I should have had a button that I could hit. It's like,
Perfect.
Pass. I do think they're pretty, though. They're nice looking.
All right. So this one actually is going to be covered a little bit more in depth in coming episodes. But there are all kinds of companies out there that are telling you if you take this thing, you're going to be smarter. If you take this thing, you're going to de-stress. You'll learn that, none of that is covered under the FDA, and the whole idea of natural is that there is no real definition as to what that is. It's not regulated in any way, but let's get into a couple of the things that are a little more popular. So
Okay.
Let's start with this substance called ashwagandha.
Ah, okay.
Does it work? Do you know what it is? I've actually taken it before, so I can talk a little bit about it. But
Let's
what's
hear
your
it.
initial thoughts?
Yes, I have heard of ashwagandha. To your point of things being like, are they natural, quote unquote? It's natural. Both of my parents are my father was, my mother is biochemists. So my mom worked in pharmaceutical drug design. My dad worked in the same industry as well. And then he was a professor for 50 plus years. So you can tell why I like to science nerd out on things. The reason why I say this is that sometimes people say these things like ashwagandha is free of chemicals, which would always make us laugh because everything is chemicals. Everything. You're looking for the difference between ones that occur naturally in nature versus ones that are synthetic, that are put together in a lab. Anywho, so yes, everything is chemicals. Everything is chemicals. Chemicals are not bad. So ashwagandha. So this is one of those things that comes from the sister science to yoga is called Ayurveda. Have you heard of Ayurveda?
Mm-mm.
Oh, yay. Learning something new, pumping those little neurons. Okay. So if yoga is a practice designed ultimately for practitioners in my lineage, yoga is a practice designed to help us self-realize. So we're looking to realize our true nature, which is peace and happiness. Its sister science is Ayurveda, which is a practice of that holistic living of what you eat and quote unquote supplements you take, basically like the herbal medicine and the food that you're eating. And it also goes to cleansing practices, quote unquote cleansing practices, and some of the timing of what you do according to your body cycle of the day. I won't go too far into that, but Ayurveda is a whole science. So my Ayurvedic practitioners who are trained and steeped in the tradition, they basically are like PhD level practitioners. If you go to one of them and they go like, hey, John, you work in a job that no matter what you do, you're going to experience chronic stress. It's just the nature of the job you do, right? Cyclical nature of having a career in aviation. You're up, you're down, quite literally, you know. I'm noticing also that you might be depleted in X, Y, and Z. They will do a whole complete workup of John Niehaus. And they might say, I'm going to suggest these things for your diet. I'm going to suggest these things for your daily schedule when you're not flying to help your processes regulate. We might give you some ashwagandha here and there to sort of level things out a little bit. And over time, when your physical system gets stronger by doing all the other natural holistic practices, eventually we'll drop the ashwagandha. How we do it here in the United States is someone says, you have stress and anxiety and trouble sleeping, take ashwagandha. Poof. And they don't always look at the physical health or characteristics of the person or the lifestyle. Because if you are stressing yourself out and burning the candle at both ends, you could be chugging that ashwagandha however you take it, and it's not going to make an appreciable difference. You can't outrun stress, a bad diet, and a lack of physical activity. You can't. No herb is going to do that. That's where, again, it gets that bad name of like, oh, I took ashwagandha, it didn't do anything for me. And meanwhile, you're having like 3 beers a night, you get 6 hours of sleep a night, you have a lot of stress, you don't have good social relationships, and you hardly ever exercise. Duh. What's been your experience though?
You know, it's funny. I took it for a little while. Those that know, I was program director for NAFI for a long time. And basically I was outside of the board for a long time. I was kind of by myself. And so trying to fly, trying to manage NAFI, trying to go do a type rating, it was wow. A lot. I did try it and I had good results with it. It's not something that I take all the time. And everything that I have seen, it basically says that there's no reason why it would have any issue with your pilot medical. I did notice during training that under those stressful situations where your heart would really kind of start pumping, that you did feel a little bit like, okay, this is stressful, but I don't know, it did kind of lower that problem and allow you to focus on what's happening versus what's happening to you. And so, you know, I had good results with it. So it all depends. And I don't know exactly whether there's placebo effect involved in that. I'm sure there probably is.
Were you taking it in like a pill, or were you actually buying the root and like?
Oh God, no. Yeah, no, it's
yeah. Okay.
So like GNC has a thing that you can take. So
it's a podcast, everyone. You couldn't see my face, and I just rolled the eyes and sunk down to the floor. So like when I've gotten ashwagandha, because I have taken it from my Ayurvedic practitioner, I'm actually given ashwagandha itself, like the actual thing. And then there's like a whole procedure that you do, which really increases the potency of it. I won't get too far into that, but it's just, to me, this is all like comparing apples and oranges, you know, like a powder you get at GNC versus like a practitioner actually giving me ashwagandha itself and saying, here's how to prepare it for you. I don't know. I'd put my method against your method any day.
Oh, of course. And you can tell that the world is starting to see these things, because you're starting to see like major food producers going, oh, what are we going to put in our food this time that people are going to buy? And so you're starting to see like ashwagandha infused, like, I don't know, almond milk and cereals and all of these other things. So it's definitely becoming something a little bit bigger, which is why we're talking about it. Like, yeah, you see all these buzzwords and it's supposed to make you buy the product, but does it actually do anything? And what does that actually mean? And so I don't know. I've tried it a few times. Like I said, it's worked for me, but who knows whether there's any kind of actual scientific benefit to that or not. I don't know.
To be continued.
Right. So then the next one, and it probably is the same argument as what we just talked about, this whole concept of adaptogens. And that's a long list of things. It's anything from, lion's mane
Right.
and the various like types of mushrooms that you can take, because there's like mushroom coffees out there now that are supposed to be helping improve your retention and memory and your sleep and your there's a lot of talk right now about gut health and all of this stuff and the benefits that holds. Does any of this carry any weight? If I buy this mushroom coffee that is like $30 a bag versus my normal coffee that's like 10, am I actually spending that money wisely, or am I
Yeah.
just again buying snake oil?
So some of it I'm like, filter it through the lens of your own intelligence and decide. If I had a nickel for all the crazy crap that I have tried, like I would be so rich. I have tried mushroom coffee. I thought it tasted horrible. I love coffee. So why they're putting these nasty ass mushrooms in them? Excuse me. Gross. It was so disgusting. My husband's like, "You don't like it?" I'm like, "No, it tastes disgusting. Why would I drink that?" So, if you're talking about adaptogens in general, I think what happens is that there is some validity to it. However, it's like what I've been saying this whole thing. I feel like what we do is we take this great loaf of bread, which is holistic nutrition, which is really looking at the interplay of everything you're eating and how it works together. And we pluck out one constituent component that we've identified in science. And we say, oh, that's the component that we need, forgetting that how our body interprets things is not on a single mineral or supplement or adaptogen level. Our biochemistry functions when we take things in and how they interact with one another. So it's how does the lion's mane interact with the other stuff that's in your body? And at this point now, we've only identified a minuscule amount of the compounds that are in an apple, much less to say in lion's mane. So we think we know a lot. We know almost nothing. Nutritionists out there will agree with me. I've spoken with them. We know a lot, but there's so much that we don't know about food that hasn't even been identified yet. What we do have is we do know there are some components in things like reishi mushrooms, lion's mane, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you go look up the work of Lee, something or the other, if you look up dragon herbs, there is a tremendous wealth of information, a lot of research through that company on the specific application of particularly mushrooms and how they interact with our biochemistry. If you're just pulling a single lion's mane and throwing it in coffee, does it work as well as it would for someone like me who I practice Qigong and I study the Taoist texts and I'm living that lifestyle as well as a yogi? They're very much in harmony. Takes more work my way, but I think it's more effective.
So here's one
Bursting
that's
all of your bubbles.
oh here's one that came up on the social media feed that is the vibe of the day. Have you
All right.
ever heard of this slime called Shilajit?
Oh, that sounds familiar, but no, tell me more.
Okay, so it came up on the social media feed. I've never tried it. I've never even heard of it before. It's called Shilajit, and it is this like slime that comes from the mountains of the Himalayas. Like it like oozes from the cracks in the mountains, and people are trying to sell this at like $80 a bottle, and they say that it increases your energy, your athletic performance, your testosterone levels, all kinds of crazy stuff. Do you want to try some slime?
I'm going to pass on the slime and say, leave the slime alone. Leave it in the Himalayas. That's where it wants to be. It doesn't need to be ripped off the mountainside and flown to your suburban Michigan house. Come on. Like,
But the benefits.
but the benefits.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't tell the story. We've been teasing it for the longest time.
Oh,
How about we finally talk about the stress
okay.
relieving bed sheets?
Let's rip off the Band-Aid.
Let's rip this off. So full disclosure, I'm not a gullible boob. I I promise that I'm not. Here's the story. So my wife, she has a lot of knots and stuff in her back. She carries a lot of tension in her shoulders. My mom has fibromyalgia, and so she has, the aches and pains that come with that. And, I'm always looking for a quick fix. And so I saw these ads on my Facebook feed that has these bed sheets, and they're called grounding bed sheets. It's like sleeping on the ground, which, as we all know, is not comfortable. and it's hilarious because the ads are these people that are like, does it really work? And so they take, one end of their little electrometer and they plug it into the ground and they're like, see, it's 0. And then they like connect it to the sheets that are plugged in. They're like, see, the sheets are 0 too. And it's like these bed sheets that have silver woven into the thing. It's completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But I was feeling, I don't know. I just wanted to waste some money one day, I guess. First world problems. And just decided like, well, what the heck? Why not? If it works and, any of this stuff is true, maybe it might help, my mom or my wife, or maybe I'll get better sleep. Who knows? Probably not, but who knows? So I ordered these sheets, and they're not inexpensive. And they show up and you don't even get a top sheet. All you get is a bottom sheet, which is incredibly inconvenient because how do you match a pair of sheets to a top sheet when you just can't? So first, red flag. Secondly, they give you a little meter thing that you plug into the wall and it's supposed to basically make sure that you don't burn your house down in the process, which is always very comforting. And then, of course, a lot of the comments on social media are like, hey, if you're plugged into the wall and your house gets struck by lightning, then what happens? So there's a lot of red flags when it comes to this, but I got these sheets and I got them plugged in and it like little clips onto the thing. And I'm sure there's some dude who's just laughing in his basement because he went and bought like $4 sheets and all he had to do was sell you a cord that clips onto it and then charges you 80 some bucks for it. I have no scientific or even experiential reason to believe that any of this works. One night's sleep on this versus any other sheets, I don't really notice any kind of difference. Of course, on the website, they'll be like, oh, well, you have to sleep on it for 30 days before you feel any results, 60 days, a year, who knows? But if you plug in your little electrometer to it, it's going to say 0. So I am guessing that the answer that you are about to provide me is I just need to try harder and sleep better on these plugged in bed sheets. And in spring in Michigan, hope that I don't get struck by lightning. Is that what you're going to tell me?
I'm going to tell you to buy a surge protector and plug that into the wall and plug your bed sheet thing into the surge protector so we don't have Crispy John. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I have... So my dad was an electrician in the Navy, and I can hear him right now going, what a load of, in addition to his biochemistry background there. The whole idea of grounding and all of that, you'd be better off if you wanted an effect like that. You'd be better off. Like, you know how good you feel? Like some people are beach people. Like if you go to the beach and you walk barefoot or you sit on the sand, or if you're not a beach person, if you are like, know how good kids feel when they run barefoot on the earth. There is some validity to us as a human organism actually wanting to be physically connected tactilely through the earth. And then also the microorganisms that live in the soil. There's a lot of evidence that people who garden a lot and have their hands in the soil and actually, viscerally connected to the earth, not through a bed sheet, but connected to the actual earth and soil, that they have better microbiomes in their guts and they have a better biochemical makeup of all the microbiome that lives on our skin. But those are people who are in actual contact with the earth, either walking barefoot on the earth or have their hands in the soil through gardening. I don't know that we can get the same effect by plugging into the wall. But I haven't, when you first told me about this months ago, I did look at the website and I was struck by how they use a lot of scientific terms, but completely incorrectly. And I forget what they are because I forgot. I didn't really prepare for this episode on purpose. But I do remember they borrowed a lot of these scientific sounding things that sound really good. But then when I thought through what I know of science, which is decent given my upbringing, I was like, yeah, but that's not actually accurate. So I might have to do a little more research to fully debunk your sheets. But at the very least, please buy a surge protector and do that.
All right, so we'll kind of rapid fire a few of these as we start to wind this down a little bit.
All right.
So I had a student of mine who now works at the airlines, and he's an active pilot. He's an active dad, and obviously, anytime pilots are talking about sleep, which we've already had episodes on, it's important. And everybody talks about the idea that, well, if you stare at your phone or your iPad or computer too long, you get this blue light in your eyes, and it causes you not to be able to sleep. So what do internet companies do? They create a solution, and the solution is to buy glasses you can wear at night that filter out blue light so that you can sleep.
Interesting.
What do you think? Does this work?
Well, what did your student say?
I mean, he wears them. He looks a little ridiculous, but he wears them. Now, I actually did the research on this a little bit as I was putting this together, so I can sort of elaborate on that after I get your initial thoughts.
Okay. Well, what we know about sleep science and what we know about how our human organism is designed to live in conjunction with the natural light cycles of the sun and the moon. Period. There's no getting around that. We know all the shift workers and the people who stare at computers late at night, that they have worse health outcomes, especially from ages 50 and beyond. We know this beyond a shadow of a doubt. So if it's blue light or if it's a bright incandescent light that you're reading by or whatever, if you're staying up past your bedtime, it's no good ski. So I don't really know about the quality of the light itself, because to me, it's a completely moot topic. An hour before bed, we know the research shows to dim your lights by half. And doing that starts to promote the biochemicals you need to feel sleepy and to induce rest. So if wearing those glasses filters half of that light that's hitting your retina, and you still are getting triggered for that biochemical chain of the parasympathetic nervous system going on, okay, maybe I could see an argument for it. But what happens to me, if I'm looking at my phone, my brain is going like this. It doesn't matter, even if I have it, because on the iPhones, you can turn on the different light. I notice if I get caught on that phone, even if I fall asleep afterwards, I wake up in the morning, I feel completely different than if I do something like some breathing. Oh, I don't know, coupled with the bonus episode I did leading into a guided relaxation. I feel completely different when I wake up the next morning from that.
And you would be correct. All the research says that the effect of the blue light, especially the blocking of the blue light, is negligible. It's more about the fact that if you're looking at a tablet, a phone, a computer, you're engaging your mind and your interest, and it is that keeps you awake more than the light itself. So not to say that it's not possible for the blue light to have that kind of effect. And there actually is some research in the blue light, like being exposed to blue light can help you with things like seasonal affective disorder and stuff like that. Right. In fact, I actually have some research from when I was in college where I got paired up with a fatigue study for flight attendants and pilots, and that was part of it. So there is some research that says that does work, but filtering it out at night because of your devices, you just look ridiculous. That's really what it amounts to. So again, snake oil, shysters.
Shysters. Some of it can be like a stepping stone, though. Like you do something like that, and then you start to go like, maybe I can make another choice towards what I want even more. It's like me. Like I started meditating because I wanted to be better at performing music. Like that was it. It was like purely like, I want to be like a badass clarinetist. So let me meditate. And then that was like the gateway towards me being like, oh, I could feel that way all the time. That could be like a lifestyle. But it didn't start there with like, oh, I want to be a yogi. So like start where you are, take a step, wear the funky glasses. Maybe then eventually go, maybe I don't need the iPhone right now.
All right, next up. So, aromatherapy and essential oils. Am I going to solve all my problems with one of those little diffuser dealies in my bedroom?
Well, you're not going to solve all your problems, no. However, essential oils in this country are highly unregulated. Very often, what you think you're getting is probably not what you're getting, and the potency of what you're getting is probably very weak. If you want to know about essential oils, because there is a ton of evidence that they can actually work topically, orally, and then also through diffusing, which is what you're saying of like misting it into the air. If you want to know more about essential oils, look to the work that they do in Germany, in England, and in France. Because in those countries, it's treated as a part of the like biomedical model where they actually do the large scale clinical trials on things like chamomile. And they look at all the different things you can do, all the different ways it can be ingested, all the different populations. Like they do it as robustly as we do our drug trials here. And they have so many decades of research into this. Whereas in this country, we don't do that research and we don't regulate it. So what we're buying is very often not what we think we're getting. And so then we go, oh, they don't work. It's like, well, you're buying something that's labeled German chamomile and it's probably barely that, if it's anything. So look into the work of Europe and Germany. They have a lot of robust studies. And we do know things like chamomile, valerian root, frankincense, vetiver. All of these things have known pathways in through our body that can help reduce stress and anxiety and induce sleep quality. However, usually you have to be properly assessed and know what your issue is and use the right thing in the right dosage and in the right way. Some people might be topical. Some people might be taking it orally. Some people might be diffusing it. But just going to CVS or a drugstore and buying a thing of crappy lavender oil and being like, I still feel as anxious as I did before. Well, again, go to someone who specializes in it and you're actually looking at data-driven research and buying a very high quality product and using it in the proper way, there will be a good result. If you just buy a random bottle of who knows what, it's just going to stink. And that's all that's going to happen. And
I showered in lavender oil and I'm not feeling any different.
I don't feel any better. My eyes are burning. But so to tell you about essential oils, I used to think they were bunk because I was buying a bunch of crap. And then I got turned on to, again, the whole European methodology, studied it a little bit more, found some higher quality stuff. And then I was blown away at how effective it was. But it was a huge learning curve. And I had to find the right people to guide me in the right direction. My husband was a total skeptic. He thought I was nuts because I have this whole cabinet of essential oils upstairs until he had a cold. And then I used a specific blend and his cough went away. And then he stubbed his toe and I put a different oil on it and the pain like went away like that. And now he's like, hey, where's that thing we use when you've got bleeding and it won't stop? And he carries a little kit with him now of the specific oils he knows will help him. So do your
Use
research.
This oil and put this rock in your pocket. And
Look to Europe, though. They do the robust clinical trial studies. Amazing research. Here in this country, we treat it like it's bunk and we sell junk. So, of course, that's not going to work.
I will tell you that one of the things that I have grown to kind of love, we stay at Marriott properties for work when we're out of town.
Very nice.
And occasionally you'll get lucky and stay at one of the properties that has a partnership with this, I don't know, this essential oil type company. And they've got this little like pillow spray. And it's like a little lavender pillow spray. You spray on your pillow. It's supposed to help you fall asleep. It's great. It really, I mean, I don't know. Again, the effective placebo, but man, right. I spray that on the pillow on the times that it's there and I fall right to sleep. It's awesome. All right. So this one, anybody who's listened previously has heard my experience with this, and I firmly believe they work, although I did look at the research, and the research basically says inconclusive. Nobody really knows. Binaural beats.
Oh, yeah.
I use them to study. I use them to de-stress. I use them to fall asleep. I love it. it really does help. At the very least, it helps me concentrate. Maybe I've just trained myself into believing that certain things work, and then it does.
Yeah.
But it just gives my wife a headache when she tries it, because it's the different sounds. Basically, the whole idea is that it's different wavelengths going into independent ears and generating certain, I don't know, neurons in your brain or something. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but there's an app for that, and that's what I do. But in my constant search for various hacks and easy things to do, I found this years ago, and for me, it works. So no science behind it, apparently, from what I can tell, but people have looked into it, and they can't conclusively say it doesn't work. Although sometimes it depends on the actual wavelength. The power that it needs for it to work, I think, is something that maybe isn't achievable through your standard earbuds. But who knows?
Well, I know we're going to do an episode in the future about music, best kinds of music for studying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll put on my music therapist hat. I can say it actually is ample evidence, not specifically to binaural beats, but in terms of the sounds that we're listening to, that our brain and our body does tend to entrain to the sounds that we are hearing. So that's why, like, if your favorite tune comes on, you'll just start tapping your toe or like bopping your head without even like noticing you're doing it. Music and sounds in this case can bypass your cerebral cortex and they go right to your thalamus, which produces this immediate emotional and physical response. That's why we have patients. I used to work in dementia care. So patients who could no longer recognize their family members, who had lost a lot of their ability to speak, either through stroke or Alzheimer's or other unspecified dementia. And if we found music that they listened to, especially when they were in their like late adolescence or early 20s, and we'd start singing that song, it was like a light switch would get flipped. They would start to sing, they would start to engage, and it would become a way that they could continue to engage with their family members, because those musical memories get encoded at such a deep level that only a part of that stimulus is needed to trigger that whole cascade chain response of paired memory. So sound and music is very, fundamental to how those of us who are born with hearing are wired. I can imagine, to your point, you have trained your brain and possibly the sounds themselves, although the research sounds inconclusive, though, to pair that with a high degree of focus and concentration and or sleep and relaxation. So we do have science to show that it can bypass that thinking part of the brain, produce an immediate physical and emotional response, and that also only just hearing even just a few notes can instantly unlock that whole memory of that state. So why not use that to your advantage? Because we know at least that part of the science has a lot of validity to it. So you're like kind of wicked smart.
So I mean, we've kind of run the gamut of a whole bunch of different things today. I hope it was a little bit more of a kind of entertaining topic. I don't think I stumped you too hard on a whole lot of these. Are there any of the things that you can think about that maybe I didn't have on my list? Anything you want to bring up while we're debunking or even trying to kind of tell people maybe something does work?
I would say one of the biggest things that I would like to debunk is that everything has to be scientifically proven in order for you to try it. I see that a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not going to do that because it hasn't been proven yet. Obviously within reason, right? Don't go taking a bunch of random stuff and just like ingesting things, but trying different techniques, because science can only have so many research dollars and time and money to invest in all of these things. And it takes time to catch up to thousands of years of human history where people have tried a lot of these techniques and found a lot of them work, like meditation. So I'd say filter everything through the lens of your intelligence for yourself. I'm that person who, like, I've tried so many crazy things, whether it was scientifically proven or not, because I know that at the end of the day, I'm the one who will know for myself if it works. And that's all that actually matters. And we know that the nature of science is ever evolving, ever discovering. So don't wait for something to be proven. Try it. Filter it through the lens of your own intelligence, and then keep it or discard it later. But each person is going to be their own best judge. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like the craziest things I've done.
Well, I'm telling you, the Calm Cockpit's going to start selling
Yeah, right.
cotton bed sheets.
Yep.
And I want to talk to you about the benefits of cotton. And it's just going to be the fitted sheet, and it's going to be $120, and it will solve all of your problems. It's going to be a low thread count, because the low thread counts are the kinds that benefit you the most.
Absolutely.
Because they're uncomfortable. So get used to being comfortable in the uncomfortable. These are all things. Just look for it in the Calm Cockpit store and don't ask questions.
We're going to have like a whole branded line of like really crappy essential oils that are just total perfume and just nasty and don't work.
I bought these at the dollar store, and I'm selling them for $90.
Yep. They helped me pass everything with no issues whatsoever. It's so much of it's a bunch of nonsense, you know? It's like, just keep it simple. Eat well, laugh a lot, eat stuff that looks like it came from the ground or an animal if you eat animals, right? Like, get good regular sleep.
Pizza
Counts, you know, especially if you make it yourself or it's high quality. What's wrong with pizza? You know, have some joy, have some uplifting things in your life.
You heard it here first, folks. There's
no cabbage diet.
There's no easy fixes. I'm still looking for those hacks. I'm not going to stop. And my green shirt is still going to come with me every 6 to 9 months.
And I will always wear crystals on my body somewhere because I like them. They're pretty. And they remind me of my higher self, which is a very intuitive, wise person that I aspire to be. So
I think the summary of all of this is, you know, so much of it is nonsense. But what does come from a lot of it is, if it creates a system where you believe it can work, and that belief is what helps you, carry a rock in your pocket. You know, listen to binaural beats, plug your sheets into the wall. What the hey? But the rest of it, don't spend $80 on a $1 bottle of snake oil.
Yeah. And if you do want to, go find someone who practices in that field extensively, has a lot of knowledge and history, because they can actually help you in much the same way a Western doctor would or a Western teacher would. There's a lot of validity when you dive a little deeper into the ocean instead of looking for a quick fix.
All right.
Yay.
All right. Hope it was a little fun for everybody. Gita, I don't know if being in the hot seat was fun for you or not, but it was fun for me.
I love talking about this kind of stuff. People, please write us a review. We would love some 5-star reviews. Even more so, we'd love to hear from you. calmcockpit@gmail.com. We're also over on Facebook, which we post pretty regularly. There's a vague Instagram account that you can find us at, but definitely send us that email. We'd love to hear from you. 5-star reviews, always accepted. And I guess until next time, fly smarter.
And stress less.
Is Airbus 321, traffic holding crossing runway 33 left, clear to land.